Pastor. The title conjures up many images in the imagination of our society. For some, the image is a bit of a hero or a role model who seems to not only have direct connection to God, but seems to be able to, address any number of questions and do too many things. Unfortunately, for some, the title invokes pain due to abuse, directly or indirectly related from the person behind the title. There can be many images associated with the title pastor. But how about team member? Welcome to the Pastoral Leadership Connection, brought to you by Texas Ministries of the Church of God. My name is Malcolm Tyree, and I'm the guide for our monthly conversation. Rick Warren, who is now a retired pastor, he's been noted to say,
to do what God has created you to do, you're going to need a team, a brain trust, a support group, a personal board of advisors. Success is never, never, never a one-man show. No matter, you could be a solo Olympic athlete. You still need a team. You got to have coach, doctor, support, and all kinds of other people in your life. Success is never one woman or one man show. You need other people in your life.
This episode of the Pastoral Leadership Connection, we are focusing on leadership, and particularly the leadership team of a church. It can be hard to fully identify this team because of a mixture of a number of religious and political and cultural values and beliefs. For instance, a popular teaching that is common in Protestant churches is the priesthood of all believers. It acknowledges the gifts and the abilities of everyone who's part of the church. It also acknowledges the ability of everyone to talk directly to God. Yet this equality, it not only enhances the sense of everybody has a ministry, but it can also complicate who gets to determine what direction things go. The American democratic experience or experiment, it promotes the idea that everyone has a vote. We know that there are varying levels of decision-making in our government and society as a whole. And, the truth is that many of us feel like that they should have consulted us first. In some cultures, decision-making is far less equitable, and the hierarchy that is established isn't challenged. The strong systems leading that we see in a lot of places lead to obedience and compliance, but not necessarily to teamwork. So between some religious upbringing, some governmental expectations, and even the way we function in our heritage, there can be a lot of confusion. These backgrounds, coupled with the varying involvement levels of local church members, can make forming a team very difficult. Does the person who contributes the most amount of money deserve the right to be at the leadership team? What about the person who is responsible for the largest subpopulation of the church? The one who brings everybody? What about that person who is there every time the door opens and they just sit and consume? Of course, there's the very talented person or the potentially influential person. Determining who is on your leadership team is crucial. As an adult, I imagine that there are really kind of three types of teams that I could participate in. Think about it from an athletic standpoint. That there is what might be called a pickup team. This is the group of folks who are out playing basketball in the afternoon or evening time at the community park, and they show up and they play basketball. And the truth is that you may have a 3-on-3 or 5-on-5 moment, but that team isn't really committed to passing that ball or even has the best shooters. Rather, the beauty of this team is just simply the ability to play the game. A pickup team is not about anything more than playing a game in the moment with a small measure of pride, being elevated, or in my case, busted. The second team that I think about as an adult that I could participate in is what's called a rec league. Maybe you've participated in a rec league in the past. I've played rec league softball on a couple of different occasions, particularly when I was a little younger. And that team, they come together, they're a little bit more committed to the experience of being together. There's a regular time when the game is played and they show up for it accordingly. And a few of them know the rules versus a pickup team where not everybody understands the rules all the time, and the motives are different. The truth is that in a rec league, the skill level, it can vary, but the team seems to enjoy the game and enjoy each other. The third team that I want us to think about is a pro team. We just saw LeBron make the scoring record for the NBA. He's a pro and he's got the Lakers around him. And I love to watch pro athletics, particularly pro football. There's a lot that goes into making a pro team happen. Obviously, you have a high level of commitment from the team members. You have people who are loaded with talent and ability. It's really typically the top 0.01% of the athletes out there. They sometimes they enjoy their teammates, other times they just tolerate their teammates. And they know the game plan, they know the rules, they have a set of goals that are out there very specifically. The truth is that their goal is vastly different than the pickup game, where they are just going to play. It's different than that of the rec league, which is just really there for each other. The pro team has a very specific set of goals in mind. Trip Lee has said it like this.
One thing that is true is you cannot just have a couple good players that happen to be in the same place at the same time. You got to have people who practice together, who have a common goal, who understand what we're trying to do, who everybody is playing their unique part, and until all those parts work together, you're not going to be able to reach the common goal.
So whether it's pickup, rec league, or the pros, the team and understanding what the team is about matters. So when you think about your church and your leadership team, which team do you have? When you think about your church, what type of team do you have? One can fall into the trap of assuming that a pro team is a church that is restricted to just the large churches. The pro team is restricted to just the large churches where they've got ample staff and everybody's paid to show up. But it's not necessarily restricted to just large churches. And it's not necessarily restricted to just the amount of money that's associated with it. I agree. It seems like it would be easier to be a team in that circumstance, but being a pro church team is not limited to the large congregation. The truth is, elders, board members, staff, key volunteers are all often the members of a team. So our friends, family members, and the people we don't always agree with, they're part of the team as well. In church life, forming teams, especially the leadership team, can be difficult. This is where I think Tony Morgan's insight is helpful. Tony has put together a list of 7 characteristics that he thinks need to be on your leadership team members or among your leadership team members.
The first question is, do they have the leadership gifts? If they aren't leaders, they shouldn't be on this team. You also need to consider leadership capacity. And for this team, this is using the language of Exodus 18. You ultimately need leaders of hundreds and thousands. They don't have to be literally leading that number of people, but instead, it's really a metaphor for their leadership capacity.
So going back to Exodus, as we think about that leadership capacity, can they lead hundreds? Can they lead thousands? Can they lead tens? What is their capacity? Capacity is not just about the people that surround them, but the time that they have available and a great number of other pieces that go into it. But Tony's right in that leadership capacity matters when we're selecting who's on our leadership team. He goes on to say that they need to be big picture thinkers. They need to be able to see the big vision, not just be, caught up in the small, minute things. He also, emphasizes that they need to be strategic thinkers. You need to have people who can process through the steps that need to be taken, not just see things from way up above, but are able to go into the smaller level thinking. He adds in there that maybe an important element, not maybe, a really important element is team building. Are they team builders or are they solo stars? It really is significant that you have people who are committed to the team that they're on. And Patrick Lencioni, business author, goes on to remind us that it's important that we recognize that our teams need to understand the prioritization of which team they belong to first, because many people serve on a variety of different teams that are out there, but your leadership team members probably serve on your leadership team and then maybe your worship team or your youth team or a number of teams. And they have to remember that the first team that they serve on is the leadership team. And that goes into that shared organizational values that Tony Morgan emphasizes. If your leadership team isn't on the same page with each other, they won't be able to stick with one another. And you'll have a lot of infighting and conflict that's going on. Also, make sure that your leadership team reflects the diversity of the kingdom of God. Don't make it all the same. So if your team is too much of the same work background, too much of the same faith history, too much of the same education components, then your team will not necessarily reflect the diversity of the kingdom of God. And that's important for you to always keep in mind. And finally, the thing that Tony says, and it's part of the reason why you're listening to this call, is that those who are on your leadership team need to be lifelong learners. Lifelong learners don't stop. So if you don't know who your leadership team is, take the time to clarify it. And if you don't know who your leadership team is, how will they know who their leadership team is? Thanks for joining us for the Pastoral Leadership Connection. Next time when we come together, we're going to be talking about the moving to the next step after who's your team. We're going to talk about what are your team goals.